So, Kimether, your approach is going to be a little unique, but you do have Barbadian cultural experiences as well as West Indian experiences. So, can you also share, how has that journey been shaped by those experiences?
I am Black American, but I also, from my mother's side of the family, am Gullah Geechee, which is a culture that a lot of people are not aware of. I encourage everyone to look it up, but it is a primarily African-based culture that resides in Low Country, uh, southeast in the United States. And the Gullah culture has rich, significant but complex connections to the West Indies, to Barbados, Jamaica, and uh, several West African countries as well. And one of the my one of the main beauties of that culture is that it's a culture that's, though here in the United States, they have done the most amazing work in retaining a lot of their African and West Indian ways of life, and it's beautiful, which is why I encourage people to learn more about this culture because it gives you a look into really what was life like here for Black people who were brought to the United States. But what does it look like if they are not as fully impacted by um, the generation after generation of lost culture? And so I only have to go to Beaufort, South Carolina to be reminded of what life was like several hundred years ago, which is a beautiful thing. And then also on my father's side of the family, my father is Panamanian, and Panama also has really rich culture with a lot of agents who actually have gone to Panama, and it's both cultures I deeply appreciate, absolutely love. I am more richly connected with my mother's side, and but I'm still continuing to learn both, which is a very common experience of Black Americans in the United States. Even though I still have so many gaps in my knowledge of my cultural roots, uh, I honestly see myself as privileged to even have what I do have, because the vast majority of us do not have context really beyond a few generations. And the vast majority of us don't really have anything beyond slavery, United States slavery. And so some of the elements of that culture that certainly influences uh, my experience with both the health system and just how I approach health. I can I'm trying to take too much time because I know it can be complex. I'll try to focus on the parallels, actually, of what Natalie and Shawna have already mentioned. So, absolutely, within my family, I've only had displayed the importance of the women and family being strong, and not just strong, like superhero strong. I literally believe that the women in my family were superheroes growing up because their ability to navigate really, really challenging situations that it didn't appear that anyone else in my circles were having to challenge, but be able to do it with such grace and stoicism, which I what 100% thought was a strength, but that has its setbacks, um, was uh, just I was just awestruck by it, and I strived to be that way. I've seen the women in my family go through really tough medical situations, physical suffering, emotional suffering, and like not drop a tear, not do, still be able to take care of the kids, still be able to go to work full time, never miss anything. And so I thought that's how I had to be as well. And certainly that's was instilled in me too, being that importance of being strong. That was always like the solution for every problem was first, stay strong. Don't let people see how you might be being impacted by what they do or say. And it was all out of love and good intent to try to protect me from the harms of being in a country that's going to weaponize my skin and sexualize my gender. But it also had some harms in when it comes to actually dealing with a complex chronic illness like endometriosis, and that can really have you suffering. And you've never seen that kind of suffering amongst your family when they've dealt with similar, really, really hard things. So you start to really question your identity, and you question your own strength. You also can oftentimes can gaslight yourself in those situations time and time again, which I totally did. Um, Another parallel is just the normalization of suffering for Black women. And LaShawna, you're absolutely right. I do believe that it does stem from that plantation way of life, which is also complex and may not be able to go into full detail here, but you hit the nail on the head, like nail on the head. There we go. When uh, not only did we have to be strong, but we weren't fully even identified as fully human. So we didn't even have access to certain emotions. We weren't allowed to even explore and strengthen our ability to grow in certain ways. So we became um, so just one dimensional because that's how we were viewed by society. And that one dimensional view was you are here to work, make babies, and benefit the plantation owner or your actual slave owner. So that has influenced my health for sure because I've unfortunately really did have a limited view of who I was as a person. So when I would go into medical offices, I didn't come in um, with pride and recognition of the complexities of who I was as a human. I would be devoid of emotion, which I now know with me really was dissociating in those situations. And I would oftentimes just receive whatever the doctor said and said, yes, all right, thank you so much, and be gone. And then the last element I'll speak on is just the lack of trust of healthcare providers. We, for very good reason, whether wherever you are within the Black diaspora, have reasons, strong reasons for lack of amongst healthcare providers. We have a unfortunate and very egregious history of that same view of who we are as people being so reduced and downright inhumane being completely incorporated into the healthcare system. So I just went into appointments knowing I wasn't being really appreciated or viewed as a whole human. I knew that likely I won't be treated the way they would treat like their girlfriend, their mother, or someone that they actually more identify with. And I was really good at saying, sure, thank you. And then not doing anything that they say. Like so because I just did not feel that they really ever had my best interest in mind. Um, so it made me interact with the healthcare system as minimally as necessary, just only when I really had to, and then really just not take full advantage of those visits, and just let the provider do whatever they're going to do and then be out. I don't blame people for that because it's good reason again why we do that. We ultimately are trying to protect ourselves, and also we come in with the history of our people. Like we go in knowing that like you were trained within a system that thought it was absolutely 100% appropriate to just use me as a study subject and to do surgeries on Black people without anesthesia. Like I know that. I know that a lot of the public health knowledge that we have now in the literature, that the origins of it was from doing research in medical procedures on non-consenting African people. So I know that if you were trained within that system, then likely your the view of me is being impacted. How you view me is being impacted by that foundational like academic knowledge, and then mix that in with whatever types of biases that person probably has. There's good reason to want to protect ourselves and not really try to build what could be a true rich patient-provider relationship. I now really do value the importance of that patient-provider relationship, including demanding that that is a meaningful relationship. Um, but it took a long time for me to get there, and it really has. And my family, they're definitely doing their best because they're still within that culture. They still have that understanding of what a Black woman should be tolerating, how much pain she should be okay with before she actually goes to a provider, and and then not wanting to talk about our intimate parts. Like, so I really try to keep that all in mind when I'm even trying to educate my family about what I've been through and what I do with advocacy. I try to meet them where they are, but it's tough. It's really tough to tell them that um, like just how much suffering that some of these illnesses can result in, and the fact that there's a good chance that a lot of them have this too, and just were never given the safe space or privilege to even get to a provider that validated their suffering. Because I definitely come from a long line of women who had awful periods and awful chronic pelvic pain and early hysterectomies, like hysterectomies before they were 40. It just was very common too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Kimether. Well, thank you all for sharing. Kimether, you actually went into my next question was, experiences with accessing healthcare services. So you shared from the USA perspective. I think again, there may be parallels in Barbados and the UK. So LaShawna, can you share your experience with accessing healthcare services for endometriosis in Barbados?
My experiences in the healthcare system were a bit traumatic and triggering. A lot of persons in the healthcare system, I find they don't listen to the concerns that we as Black women have because there's this preconceived notion that period pain is normal, get pregnant, you're given the leaflet, as Natalie would have said, and then there isn't really much discussion after that. And for me, I had my parents who really knew that something was wrong because I was in debilitating pain, using, the always overnight pads and, having to constantly go to the bathroom, constantly change them, being afraid to sneeze. And I think that was one. And then having these really painful clotty periods. And I've been to many gynecologists in Barbados. And one of the things that I experienced that was so disheartening is that, I had experiences where the doctors would basically tell my boyfriend, that I need to get pregnant, or they would say it's all in your head. And I find that in Barbados, we really need to have sensitivity training and sensibility training, because I found that in my experience, I did not feel safe going into the gynecology or to my gynecologist alone. I felt that I needed to have someone with me, a male. And also too, I also found out when I had my partner with me and he spoke, persons listen much more than when I went in with my checklist saying, well, this month when I sneeze, this happened. This month, this is how many days I had diarrhea. This is how many days I felt as though I wanted to pass out. This is my notes here from the last period. And I found that 90% of the time, no one listened to me. And no one took me seriously until I was, upset and angry. And then, you speak from that level of upsetness and anger because, as I said, between 16 and 30, that's 14 years that I've been trying to figure out what was wrong. And I only heard about endometriosis when I was 21 years old. And I went to gynecologist and he explained to me, well, we perceive you to have this. Here's the leaflet. Here's some information. And these birth control can help. And over my experience, the birth control did not help. I was still having bad period pain. It would go from like a 10 with the birth control to like a 6, but it was still horrible. Um, I had experiences of going to public healthcare and waiting sometimes 3 hours to be seen. Yes, Natalie, 3 hours. And then the doctor comes and it's like, oh, so you're having bad period pain. Well, take this ibuprofen, take these tramadols, you'll be much better. Take them X amount of times a day. Are you on birth control? Yes, no. Well, here's this prescription. And that was it. That was the end of the doctor's appointment, right? And I would have gone to public healthcare for 5 years before my parents decided, this is not working. And we sought out a private gynecologist. I have found a gynecologist who was willing to listen, and I'm now on treatment where my pain levels is down to 1. And I've been able to have a normal life pain-free. And I really think that we really need to examine our public healthcare system as it pertains to endometriosis and as it pertains to persons who are lesser fortunate, because I would say my experience when I was lesser fortunate and going to public healthcare, I would not recommend that to a person. And that's me being honest. Like, it was ridiculous. The overarching problem is that persons do not listen to women and to people of color, because that they have this notion which stems from our plantation society model that Black women, can pain level is high. So if something is hurting a Black woman, it has to be excruciating, or they have to be on the verge of collapse for it to be taken seriously. And I really hope that in this conversation, when it's aired, that it will lead to many more Barbadian women being comfortable in speaking about the experiences that they would have had, as well as being comfortable in allowing some of these persons to know, look, this is not okay the way I'm being treated. This is not okay for you to speak to me this way, or to suggest to my partner that he needs to um get me pregnant for me to have some level of relief. And I do recognize that I am fortunate to be able to afford medical care, because for a lot of persons in Barbados, they have to go through the public healthcare system. And it's not to say that the public healthcare system is horrible in the grand scheme of things. It is to say that as it pertains to endometriosis and to pelvic health, that there are some misconceptions and there are some things that I think there needs to be a mass education campaign carried out to sensitize those persons in the way in which they should respond. So yeah, that's in a
Took me
nutshell.
all to not say preach, Pastor, because you were there preaching. So thank you. Thank you so much, LaShawna, for sharing your experiences, but also adding on to that, like ways in which we need to address some of the key issues that you've identified in Barbados, like education and sensitivity training, and obviously making people aware of the resources, right? That's really key. So thank you so much for sharing that.